I call BS to somebody that says we can't ever get access to our customers.
Hi, this is Tricia Ratliff. Welcome to my Innovation Podcast. Hello, everyone. I am here with Jason Hall from Collaborative Structures outside of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. And he's here today to talk about customer feedback, which is incredibly valuable to a product owner, a team, any organization that wants to be iterative, responsive, collaborative, etc. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks, Tricia. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Jason, let's start this conversation with why is customer feedback important?
Because there's really no other way to help ensure that you're solving the right problem for the right people without that, right? And so the less you do of that, the more you're ensuring that you're not going to deliver something that's going to solve an awesome problem for someone.
And what do we mean by customer here? How would you define customer?
I would define customer as the benefactor of the product that you are over, whoever the main benefactor is.
Oh, there might be multiple benefactors.
Yes.
When we were talking earlier, it sounded like the customer, we were talking a lot about the user. So the person who feels the value that's delivered from some type of system or something that's delivered. But the customer, particularly inside an organization, maybe other stakeholders or leaders who own outcomes for the organization to those customers. And they are also a customer.
Yeah. No, so that's tricky but also a very real thing. So you have customers. Sometimes your customers are your users. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes you have a different set of users and customers. You have stakeholders that aren't really either. You just have to be clear about what language you're going to use to describe what. Like, hey, we have to build something. Ultimately, you're building something for your users, but if your customers don't approve, they'll never see it, right? So you're, as a product manager, probably even product owner, you are thinking about both of these things. Great, I want to build this thing for a user, but what's the win? Why is the customer, why is the stakeholder, why would they approve that? And so, if I'm communicating with the team, they may not need to know all the back dealings of, the stakeholder, management and agreements that we've made, but they should absolutely know hey, the people who are going to be using this, the user, that's who I'm going to tell this narrative on behalf of. Right. So I have an organization that's saying, hey, we want to change our load balancers from Barracuda to that. Okay, well, why are we doing that? Well, we're doing that because what we're seeing is the vast majority of the organization that I support, which is also an organization you support, because this is internal, are having X, Y, and Z problems. Like, oh, okay. So when I talk to my team, I want to say, hey, yes, we want to do this thing. It's for this, this stakeholder. This is their rationale. But here's the user problem that we're solving, right? Here's the employee problem that we believe we're solving by moving from this load balancer to that load balancer, whatever it might be. So yeah, there are definitely multi-sided value props, and it trips people up. I think just being clear on the language that you're using within your context, within your team, making sure everybody's in the same bounded context. I think that's more important than saying, well, call this type of person X or call that type of person Y.
Gotcha. What would you say to a leader, a team, product owner, product manager who asks or says, look, we don't really have a way to get feedback from our users. We simply have these requests coming in from leadership and stakeholders, and it's obvious that we need to do the thing, like upgrade our security software. And the input of the users is not that important to us.
I think there is always a way to either get customer feedback or at worst case, get some type of proxy customer feedback. There's always a way to get feedback. It's just a matter of how much effort you want to expend, how bullish do you want to be. This is not my story. but I liked it so well. I'm gonna steal it. It's also an organization I used to work in with this other person, and we were both coaching teams, and they said like, hey, well, we can't get access to these people, so therefore just go ahead and take this request, take X, Y, and Z. It's funny now that I'm saying this, I'm realizing, oh, I think this is your story. So this will be funny. It is.
Oh,
This
I'd
is
love to
so
hear
funny.
how it's
Yeah.
played back to
Wait.
me.
Yeah. Yeah. No. 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 I think it is yours. And I was like, because I thought it was somebody else. I was like, no. No. I think it's yours. But was it? Did you have the story of? Um. It was like, hey, we can't talk to. It was like the traders at at
Oh my
at
gosh. Yeah,
Freddie Mac.
go ahead and tell the story.
Yeah,
This will
yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is yours. This is
Yeah,
yours.
yeah.
It's like we
Okay.
talk to the traders that
Oh,
they're
don't say
super
the name
busy.
of a company. Don't say the name of a company.
Okay. So there's some financial organization that we're in, and this coach, was getting orders from one department, on behalf of some financial traders on the floor that you absolutely know you can't talk to. They're too busy, they're hyper, whatever. And so what this person decided to do was you. Can I say it was you? Can I say it's you in that story? I don't know. Was you decided to like, I'm gonna go down to the floor. I'm not gonna approach. I'm just gonna stand around until one of them said like, hey, what are you here for? And you just said, oh, well, yeah, I'm working on such and such a software. This is software that they were using, and they said, oh, I've got all sorts of feedback, and then they made time for you, right? Like, and so I think that's just a perfect example of, yeah, I call BS to somebody that says we can't ever get access to our customers. So that's one way. Another way is, a lot of people don't think about, there are so many services for getting user feedback, and yes, you have to pay for it, but I'm sure you can find money to do that. So let's say, for example, I work in the firewall shop, and I'm not authorized to talk to our developers for some reason. You can go to like user interviews or user testing. There's so many different services where you say, hey, I want to talk to 20 or 30 newly hired developers in this type of organization. And I want to ask them specific questions about what they do to get set, like their tooling experience. And you can infer a lot of information like, oh, this is the type of generic problem that they're having. So that's a proxy means, a way
Yeah.
of doing that. And a lot of external facing product teams will, of course, they do it that way because that's how they get real feedback or customers. Internally facing, usually I like to think that you should be able to talk to some type of employee within if you're all in the same organization. But if you can't, you can use some of those same tools to try and get feedback. So anyway, there's always a way
Yeah.
to to
If
to
you
do
want
that
it.
if you want it, but you have to make the effort. You're right. You have to make the effort.
Yeah. I love that you told that story earlier. It made me laugh because I've done that kind of thing so much, and many others have too. So it's a little bit of an entrepreneurial or design thinking mindset
No,
to just go and show up and be in the situation, if you can, where that user or customer is. And it does take a little bit of creative thinking. For example, if the user is on a warship, you can't go there,
yeah, you're right. Right, you can't.
right?
You're gonna get that.
Yeah. But if people are eating lunch at their desks because they can't take their laptop outside of the building, and you happen to see people gathering in a conference room where they're sort of working, and then you can walk over, hang out, sit down. It's amazing how much you can
Yeah,
learn if you had a product, for example, in a grocery store environment, by just standing around and then
yeah,
eventually making some jokes and saying something to somebody. It does take, as an introvert, so I consider myself an introvert, but
uh,
as an introvert, it does take effort to learn how to kind of make a joke and speak to a stranger. But over
mhm.
time, because we're interested in them and their thoughts, those questions get easier. Just to kind of like get started with a non-judgmental question, to say like, tell me a little bit about your situation. And then you
Mhm.
can come around to, oh yeah, I'm working on the security software installation right now, or
Yep.
network administration, and the networks have been down recently. Has that affected you? Just getting that type of feedback is
Yeah.
possible if you if you put yourself in that situation.
You're right. You know, a lot of times, I'd say most of the times when I'm working with teams, and that's an area that I realize or an opportunity for growth, where I realize, oh, they don't, their customer discovery muscle is could use some flexing. I find it's never like it's rarely corporate organizational policy that's preventing them, but it's all internally driven. It's they kind of look at customer discovery as this a huge industry or science that they're not capable of stepping into. And yes, well, there is a lot of research on like here's how you do a good interview and here's how you use
There's
this
that.
interview for that. There is all of that, but it doesn't preclude you from trying something,
To
right?
start
And
the conversation.
to start
Right.
the conversation, I was like, look,
Yeah.
even just finding 4 or 5 people, if you know nothing else, like you find 4 or 5 of your customers and just talking to them with the worst script is better than not making first contact at all. And so a
Yeah.
lot of times it's I'm walking teams through that uncomfortable process for them. And I will say this, you know I want to say almost every time. It's got to be like 99% of the times where I've gotten teams to do this, they've always gotten something valuable out of it. Not once did a team who had never gone and done some type of customer research or interview, et cetera, walk away and say, well, that was a waste of time. There's a lot of emotional effort. We knew everything that they said. Right. And this isn't organizations that even with like, hey, we had dumps of customer interviews from years ago or from last year. Somebody else did, even in organizations where like this type of thing had happened before, if that team hadn't done it or they hadn't done it in a while, they always get something, they always get some type of aha that helps frame their thinking better, or it helps uncover some area or part of the problem where they weren't thinking about. And so use it's a huge win. And I feel good because I'm like, this is great. Now now we've done this. Now then the shock is often, oh, that wasn't a one and done. Like, that now that's a continual thing that you need to be doing.
That's a,
But they get,
I think that's a key point there, Jason, is that I've found that if you just sort of make a habit out of it, that over time, the one and done doesn't really help. It's not a trustworthy sample.
yep.
So if over time, we as a group, as an organization, as a product owner, whatever, right? We are putting ourselves out there and asking for feedback, observing, watching,
Yep.
asking questions, making jokes, which invites feedback, sometimes disclosing who we are, sometimes waiting so that the person doesn't feel like they have to be flattering to our effort or the value that we deliver. Just making a habit of that, over time, we start to be influenced by it and we get a picture of the patterns. That's really where the value is.
Yeah. And that's another, when I talk about responsibilities. So this one is a sort of continual engagement with the customer interviews, research, discovery is a responsibility of a modern product team. Now, who does that? I think depends on the team. Internally, if this is for like an internal operations team or a network team, chances are they're not going to have any design support, so that responsibility is going to fall in the hands of the product owner to do it. It will. For what I find is external facing teams, a lot of times they're more modern organizations will have a design organization or design career skill set, employees in that organization. And so oftentimes that's the responsibility of, a design strategist that might be, aligned or associated with a particular product area, right? They will kind of coordinate the sort of continual thing, right? The product manager or product owner goes to, but they don't have to, at least they don't have to worry about like the scheduling and getting those lined up. But when you don't have, when you don't have designers in your organization, then that responsibility falls to the product owner to do.
Wow, that was really fabulous. As a matter of fact, Jason, I think we have a second podcast right there.
Oh, sweet. Yes. I
Yeah,
love it.
I think
Oh,
it'll
that one
just
I could riff on for hours on that, but
thank you, Jason. It's been great to have you here.
Thanks, Tricia. It's been awesome.
All right. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.